Good morning, C.W. Henry School. This is Miss Davis coming to you virtually to bring you another Women's History Bite of the Day. Today, on March the 3rd, 2021, we're going to travel back in time and learn about one of the first incredible women in the fight for women's rights to vote. Wondering who I might be talking about? Drum roll, please. The focus of today's Women's History Bite is abolitionist, human rights activist, and one of the first leaders of the women's rights movement, Elizabeth Cady Stanton. That's a drawing of her on the left. Now, Elizabeth was born over 200 years ago on November 12, 1815, in a town called Johnston, New York. She died on October 26, 1902, in New York City. She's probably one of the oldest people we've talked about in Women's History Month, and thinking about back to Black History Month as well, one of the oldest people we've talked about. So let's learn a little bit about her early life. That's a cartoon of her on the right-hand side, showing you what she fought for. So growing up, she was exposed to law because her dad was a lawyer, a judge, and a US congressman. As a kid, she learned that law was not the same for men and women. She learned that only certain men could vote and that women had less rights under the law. She didn't believe that this was fair. She knew that she should be given the same opportunities. Well, in the early 1800s, not many women had the opportunity to go to school. Elizabeth's father, however, agreed to send her. She was an excellent student in school. And after high school, Elizabeth wanted to go to college. She quickly learned, however, that women were not allowed into major universities. She ended up going to a college for girls where she was able to continue her studies. As an adult, she fell in love and married an abolitionist named Henry Stanton. I hope you remember, an abolitionist is somebody who fought against slavery, or they are against slavery. So as an adult, she attended anti-slavery conventions, and she met other women who felt strongly about women's rights too. Women such as Lucretia Mott, Martha Wright, and Susan B. Anthony. We haven't talked about these incredible women yet, but we will on upcoming Women's History Bites. So she believed that women could do little to change their position in life unless they could change the laws. And in order to change the laws, they needed the right to vote. The fight for the right to vote is called women's suffrage. Elizabeth began to work and campaign for women's suffrage, and she would spend the rest of her life working on this important cause. As you can see from this cartoon, there's a number of women dressed in clothing from the early or mid 1800s, and the banner that they're holding says "Votes for Women." There is so much more to learn about Elizabeth Cady Stanton. We can't do it all in one morning. I want to share a quote with you that she said. These are her words. "The history of the past is but one long struggle upward towards equality." That makes me think not only of the struggle for women's rights, but the struggles that of many other communities that have faced in American history. So as I said, we can't talk about all of Elizabeth Cady Stanton's life in one video because her fight for women's rights to vote is closely tied to the stories of many other incredible women we're going to talk about throughout the month of March. Here's just some topics that I want everyone to have at the top of their mind as we continue with our Women's History Bites. We're going to talk about Susan B. Anthony. We're going to talk even more about the women's suffrage movement. We're going to learn what does the term suffragist or suffragette mean. We're definitely going to talk about some women's rights conventions and specifically a place called Seneca Falls. If you want to learn more about women's suffrage and women's rights, I encourage you to check out the video on Brain Pop. It's a video that's probably best if you're in 3rd to 8th grade, but definitely you can learn more about it by checking it out. I'll link it in the description of this YouTube video. So that brings us to the end of today's Women's History Bite of the Day. We're going to continue to talk about Elizabeth Cady Stanton, as well as how her work for the fight for women's rights to vote is so closely connected to many other incredible women in our history. Have a wonderful day, everybody. I look forward to talking to you more tomorrow. Bye.